Right, let's get this going. Not done one of these for a while, just due to obviously family, personal circumstances. My dad got really ill and unfortunately passed away from cancer. So as much as this was supposed to be a weekly thing, kind of on a Monday and then build up to the weekend games, over the course of the last kind of 3-4 weeks, it's just not been possible for myself. So apologies on that, because I know I did say that would be a thing moving forwards, but it will be, and it will be a big part of the subscription service. But let's just crack on straight into it. I watched all the highlights of every game this weekend. I've watched a good few press conferences, and I think where we need to start is the big talking point. I think is United, and not in a sense of going in on them and the kind of classic how bad they've been, because we all know that and everyone knows that. But what I was really interested about was Ruben Amorims' press conference after the game. Now, I like the way Ruben Amorims speaks. I like the way that he spoke in that press conference just there yesterday. I think he talks a very good game, and I have said in previous videos that I do see little bits of what he's doing at United starting to come through, right? Start to come through, and one of those biggest things for me is he's turned Bruno Fernandes into someone that has been a high-class level player. We all know that. I always felt like Bruno wouldn't drag you out of trouble. Like, he might get you your goals and assists, but in terms of how being that leader and dragging you out of trouble, I've never felt like he was going to be that guy. And I think Amorim's added that, for example. That's one thing. And there's just a few things that I have seen that I think he's done well from a coaching point of view. But what I was really interested about yesterday was his stats. I'm trying to make this a little bit more professional. Got some notes and stuff on here. So his press conference yesterday, I think, first of all, he needs the patience and he needs the time, but he also can't keep losing, right? Like, we all know that. And there's progress in little bits, as I've said, but ultimately, winning football matches is what keeps you your job. So I think he deserves time. Of course, he deserves the summer, and we'll get into if they win the Europa League and stuff like that, but he can't keep losing, right? And his press conference was interesting with the things that he said. And I flicked the game on yesterday just as West Ham went up and scored the second goal. So I was out with my brother and my uncle who's over from Canada. We went out, we had a walk, we had a couple of pints, came home and we switched the game on just as West Ham went up and scored the second goal. Literally turned it on as that whole attack was happening. Agarty loses the ball. And I'm watching it with him and I'm like, that was awful for Man United. The energy of the players, the lack of urgency, the enthusiasm to kind of defend. The ball bounced around a few times before it eventually ends up in the back of the net. And it was just really poor. And I get that, like, the focus is on the Europa League, but, and Amorim alludes to this, that's really, really, really dangerous. If all they're going to focus on is that is very dangerous. And he did say that. He said there's a lack of urgency to protect the goal. And I've put spot on, that's what I felt during the second goal that I seen when I turned it on when West Ham score. There was just a real lack of urgency to even try and defend it. It was really, really poor, and I don't think it's an excuse to say, well, they're focused on Europe. And he said that, like, the players can't just be focused on playing in these European games. And he said they're more focused in Europe, and it does feel like the players are picking and choosing their moments. And he said that if you want to be a high-level player in a high-level club, you can't pick and choose your moments. You show up in every game, and you try and win every game. And this whole United kind of run, right? If we look back to, Van Gaal probably did quite all right, Solskjaer, Mourinho, they've all just had like little moments and spells in games that they show up and the United fans get really excited and it kind of goes on to it. And I felt like that on Thursday. And yeah, of course, they've got to a final of the Europa League and that's huge. And yeah, you're going to celebrate that. I'm not saying that, but it was that over-exuberant celebration of like, yeah, come on, we're in the Europa League. And, let's be honest. If the Champions League wasn't at stake for winning that, are United fans as buzzing and happy, and does it have as much to it as it would if they didn't? It's a trophy, it's a European trophy. I remember one of my earliest memories of a Liverpool fan was being allowed to stay up and watch Liverpool win the UEFA Cup against Alaves and that mad crazy extra time game where there's still golden goal. So like, I get that whole side of it. It's a European trophy, it's a trophy, I get it. But it's definitely going to be diminished if there isn't the Champions League on that. And, he said they have to be brave and strong in the summer, and they absolutely do, and they need to do what he wants to do, right? Like, they're going to have to back him on ins and outs, and, he did say that if they don't go and they're not going to be brave in summer, then maybe someone else should do it. Like, I can see the guy trying to walk if he doesn't feel like things are going his way, and I think he's having a look around at everything, and he's really concerned about, he kept alluding to the feeling of the club, the feeling around the club, the feeling around the players, everything. He just said that the feeling is not is not great, right? The feeling of being a massive club, he said, is not there anymore of Man United, and he's trying to get them back to that. And look, for all the things that they still have that pool because of the name and the badge and everything, and I don't disagree with that, but the longer you go without winning, the worse that you get, as we're seeing this season coming 16th or 17th. Those players don't want to go there. Like, other clubs are coming in for those guys that are up the top end of the league or in other leagues, and they're not going to want to come to you. And if they do, I'd be a bit concerned, because are you just chucking that more money at them again, right? Like, are you throwing that money, and what are the characters like that are coming in? So his press conference was massive, and like I say, he's alluded to the feeling of being a massive club, and it's just not there at all. And he's absolutely spot on. And again, as I said, I think he does talk extremely well, and I think that, I don't know if the job's just too late for him. It might just be a little too late for a guy like that to come in. I don't know. It doesn't look it doesn't look great. They're going to finish 16th or 17th, and that Europa League final, I mean, is just literally like, I heard some guy on a podcast describe it as like those movies for United and Spurs where the place is about to explode and you're holding on to that rope from like the helicopter, and the thing's about to explode. Like, one of them's falling in when it explodes, right? And I do think it's bigger for United, because Spurs have been up there and have been in the mix and have done all right under Pochettino and everything like that. And the Spurs are a massive club. I've got a great friend, Rob Larson, in California still, who's a big Spurs fan. I've got a little bit of a soft spot for them and because of him. But United are bigger because they've won the leagues. They've got the most amount of English league titles alongside Liverpool now. Like, it's a lot bigger for United if they don't make it in there. For me, it really, really is. And just while we're on it, like the whole Europa League, like I really don't think that the winner should get into the Champions League. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Liverpool fan and it's Man United. Like, I think everyone's like saying to me, I put a video up about it the other day, like, would they be as bothered, like I said, if it wasn't, the Champions League wasn't on the line? And a lot of people messaged me saying it's still a big trophy, but they've put that the winner gets to go into the Champions League for a reason, is because people don't really deem it as being a big trophy. Right? Like, I just think that them, UEFA putting on the fact that you get to be in the Champions League by winning the Europa League, says to me, we need to add something to this trophy because people aren't really too bothered about it, right? And that's my opinion on it. And I just don't think the winner should get into the Champions League. I think the Champions League should be fully merited on your league form. As we all know, it used to be called, the European Cup Winners' Cup, and you only got into it if you came top. And I know those days are long gone and everything, but should you get into it for winning the Europa League? I just really don't think you should. I think that would then mean that you're really going for the Europa League trophy and the medal, and you're not going for the Champions League and the money, right? And Gary Neville said that a couple of weeks ago, and he said that the games, it's a battle for money now, right? With those two teams. What else have I put down here? Just Champions League should be reward and form. Another point that I just touching on Neville there. I did listen to his podcast that he did after the game yesterday at Anfield, and he just said more managers will continue to keep their job from getting European football. Absolutely, and I think that I'll have the league table up here. I think if you look at those clubs that are going to start to get into Europe, and again, I had a really interesting discussion with my brother and my uncle when we were sat having a couple of pints outside yesterday. England now are going to get five teams in the Champions League. Again, do I think that's right? Probably not. I think you just stick with your four, but that's UEFA doing this whole kind of point system and all that, and they're going to get five, and then you talk about then the teams that are below that to get into the Europa and Europa Conference League, and if you watch Match of the Day, there's so many scenarios for how many teams could be in Europe within the English Premier League. Now, I support Liverpool, and they're in the English Premier League, and that's the league that I know the most about. I watch on a weekly basis, and what this podcast and these videos are literally going to be mainly about. That's going to be the main focus, because that's the league that my team play in. But there was a whole talk about that Super League, right, during COVID, and I said this yesterday to my brother and my uncle. Are we starting to get to the point now where the English Premier League, because of the money, all of these teams now that are getting in there, Aston Villa can now pull Marcus Asensio across from PSG, that's been at Real Madrid and PSG, and that's great for Villa, and that's great for the fans. I'm not saying it's not. Nottingham Forest, if they can get into Europe, who can they lure in? That pool of being able to get players in, and I just wonder, is the Premier League going to monopolise Europe at some point? Because how are the Serie A teams going to catch up? How are the Liga teams going to catch up when if the Premier League continues to do so well and continues to be rewarded in Europe, and Villa do well, and the next team that make it in this season, out of the teams in there, maybe Newcastle, if they start to do well, they're going to start to pull these other players in that these Serie A clubs and the Liga clubs and Bundesliga clubs may usually go and get, but they're not going to be able to get them anymore because these clubs are in Europe and they're able to chuck them big money. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to look out for over the course of the kind of next 3 to 5 years in Europe. And I don't know how the points rewarding system works, but to me, I can continue to see the English clubs doing well, and if it stays in that 1 to 5, then I think you're going to see a bit of a mix of these Villas, maybe Forest, Brighton, and Bournemouth if they can get a bit better. Are those teams going to eventually get into Europe at some point, potentially the Champions League? And then there's the whole other thing to deal with of having to play Champions League football or European football and play 2 games a week. And I think these clubs are getting better equipped for it because the squads are getting bigger, as I'm saying, because of the money. They're going to have to deal with that, and I think it's going to be very difficult because the league's getting so strong to get back-to-back Champions League spots. And, as a Liverpool fan, I think that's why it's important. You kind of seen over the last couple of years, it's been Liverpool, Arsenal, and City as like a 3, right? Liverpool probably the third of the 3, apart from this season. And it's really important you don't get dragged into that battle. Like, Arsenal are kind of getting dragged into that battle. Man City are dragged into that battle this season. Like, you don't want to start getting into that mix of these teams that, if, for example, if Bournemouth don't have European football and they're playing 1 game a week and they keep a lot of their core players and they recruit well again in the summer, and they're playing 1 game a week, and then all of a sudden Chelsea, for example, and Newcastle are playing, 2 games a week in the Champions League, and they're struggling to kind of get that going, that routine, that rhythm going. All of a sudden Bournemouth are going to jump up there, and it makes the league so difficult, right? And it already is. So to get back-to-back European places is going to be really tough, and I just thought that was an interesting point I wanted to talk about with regards to the kind of whole European spots and everything like that. Newcastle, huge win against Chelsea yesterday, 2-0. I mean, Newcastle have just got that. If you look at their form there, they've won 3 out of the last 5, lost 1 and drawn 1. They've definitely been, bar City, kind of just up there and look like they're the most informed team and have that feeling that they're going to really make it in there. I like Newcastle, great club. I know they've got the Saudi ownership, and that came in at just probably the wrong time when the rules started to change, and they definitely lost the momentum and would have felt hard done by. But Newcastle, it's a huge win. I think they'll get in there. I mean, just on Chelsea, I talked about it with the boys when we did a podcast in the studio earlier on in the season, and we were all kind of praising Maresca and Chelsea when they're up there, and I really liked how Maresca talked and the way that Chelsea looked, and I think I'm allowed to change my opinion as the season goes on. That's what football's about, and I'm not sure. It's very peppy, but with no real kind of consistent cutting edge, and I think that's what a lot of these teams and these managers miss out on, that idea of trying to play football is, like, at the end of the day, you need cutting edge and you need goals. You need cutting edge and you need goals. So, yeah, huge win for Newcastle yesterday. City draw 0-0 with Southampton. I thought Ruben Dias's comments, obviously, about Southampton didn't come to play, and, Pep said that they just defend their own box, and it's like, I've been there coaching too in games, and even watching Liverpool, and you play some of those teams, and if you draw or you lose, you do kind of go at that, but that is an arrogant kind of, why are they not playing football against us? Like, Southampton can't open up and play against City. I always say that every team should try and go for it, but, you've also got to know where you're at, and, Southampton can't do that. They're going to get torn to shreds, and it's going to be a terrible day for them. It's not to say they should never go forwards, but they can't open up and just play, so... Pep always gets frustrated with that, and I always found that those managers that really are into that style of keeping the football and wanting to knock it around and everything, kind of snobbery to the teams that kind of, you're maybe Atleticos, your Inter Milans, that style of team that are maybe a lot more compact and defensive. And again, I always say I'd rather my team be the team that has the ball and go forwards, but there's a side of the game that you need to do that, and there's no right or wrong reason. Football's not about snobbery, and it's not about playing one way, and that's why it's such a great game. Is Forest have played a completely different way this season, and even though they've dropped down to 7th now, have been a revelation in the league this season. So yeah, you can play anyway, but that's a Pep thing. That's definitely drilled into it. It's that snobbery thing, And just on Forest there, obviously the owner comes onto the pitch yesterday with Nuno after the game, and he's having a go at him. I mean, Forest are guaranteed now, Europa League at least, and that's massive for them, for a team that are floating around the bottom. The owner shouldn't be coming on the pitch. Like, I wouldn't want to be working for him. I would not want to be working for him. So that was really really poor. Let's see what else I kind of wanted to talk about. I think we'll move on to Anfield. It's been going for 15 minutes here, so I think we'll just quickly touch on Anfield and Liverpool and Arsenal yesterday. Let me just get my notes up. Sorry about that. I think from a let's go from the Liverpool point of view to start with. I was frustrated. I really wanted Liverpool to put Arsenal to the sword yesterday and just set a marker down and say, come and catch us for next season. Thought we did really, really well in the first half, and we looked a lot more sharp. Arsenal obviously go out of Europe. They're not playing Declan Rice. They look a little tired and a little lethargic. And, I really wanted Liverpool to kind of make that 3 and 4 and just, get that game over with and say, look, that's, come and get us next season. And it didn't happen, and Arsenal were better in the second half. Martinelli scores a decent header. I think it'll be interesting to see, maybe try him down the middle. I said a couple of weeks ago in a video that he's just not been ruthless enough off that left-hand side, and it's an area that everyone knows Arsenal need to improve in. I'm not going to batter on about it, but, maybe Martinelli down the middle is not a bad shout. I think that would be an interesting one to try. He's got the pace. He'll make those kind of runs because he likes to come inside as a winger, and I think that might not be a bad idea, but they need to go out and buy someone that's going to guarantee them goals, absolutely. So they start the second half well, but I tweeted this yesterday. Arne Slot's got close to everything right this season in terms of, on the pitch and off the pitch with the contracts and everything like that. I really think he's handled everything so well from taking over from Jurgen Klopp, and obviously, he's won the league title, but I thought subbing Trent on yesterday was wrong. I thought it was poor. I think that there's all these outlets telling Liverpool fans how to feel, and I'm a Liverpool fan, and I'm not from Liverpool, so I'm not from Liverpool, I'm not a Scouser, so as much as I love the club and I'm connected to Liverpool and I love it, I'm not from Liverpool, I'm not a Scouser, and there's the different level of deepness to that, right, and I fully understand that, but the reason I support Liverpool is you support any of your team is the values that Liverpool has as a club and as a city, and it's always aligned with me, and I think that for yesterday with Trent coming on, I think you're allowed to feel like, go on mate, fair play, you want to go to Madrid and you want to go and experience that and you want to try a different lifestyle and you want that kind of superstardom and you want to be with Bellingham and maybe be in the papers and all that a little bit more and test yourself there. Look, like, no problem with that, go and do that. But on the flip side of that, people are then allowed to be pissed off with that and they're allowed to boo you if you want. I wouldn't boo Trent Alexander-Arnold if I was at Anfield yesterday. I wouldn't be booing him. I wouldn't do that. But if you make that decision, as everyone in the media, Sky and all that keep saying, well, he's going to Real Madrid, he's allowed to make that decision. Yeah, he is. Fair play to him, good luck. But then if you're a Liverpool fan, especially if you're from Liverpool, and you're a Scouser and he's come through that, you're allowed to feel a way about it too, and you're allowed to, you're allowed to boo him if you want to boo him. So both things can be true, both things can be true, and I just thought, look, he scores the goal against Leicester a couple of weeks ago, he takes his top off, he has all that, he gets to jump around in front of the fans, and they kind of are singing his song and they're clapping him and everything like that after winning the league against Spurs the other week, and I just thought for me, and I know Bradley can't play 90 minutes, but don't play him again, just don't play him again, then it kind of ends with him in front of the fans doing all of that, and then he's there on the bus, and he'll be there for the trophy lift and everything like that, and he can be a part of it, and on a day like that, I don't think he'd get too much abuse from Liverpool fans because everyone will be happy and they'll be into the whole thing. So I just thought it was the wrong move for him. I really did. I think put Curtis Jones at right back or chuck someone else at right back there and just keep him out of the firing line, and I know he'll probably not think that, and he'll probably be thinking he's trying his best, but if he gives the ball away or he plays the guy on side yesterday, you just naturally get a bit more aggressive towards him. So yeah, I just thought that was wrong from Slot yesterday. I just don't think he should have played him, and I don't think he should play again, and that's my opinion. And like I say, he's been a legend, he's been here, it's been amazing. I would love for him to stay, but I wrote down in my notes, just last point on this, my dad always used to say to me when he was working at Quick Fit, and he was one of the managers and running all these centres in Edinburgh, and he used to say, if any manager came to me with their CV, to say, look, I'm moving to another job, or I'm gonna go do something, completely different. Here's my month's notice. My dad would just say, absolutely no problem at all. That's fine. Like, good luck with it. But you're not just stay off for the month. You're not gonna work again because why? I know you've checked out, right? You've checked out. So why am I gonna have you kind of in and around the area when I know you're not? you might just not have ill intentions, and you might still be trying to work hard, but you've shown you're not with us anymore, right? And from the Trent point of view, you're not with us anymore, and it's been great, but there's no need for him to play. There is no need for him to play. So I just thought I'd throw that in. I thought that came to my head when I was writing down notes on this, what my dad said to me. And then, just very finally to wrap this up, hitting about 20 minutes here, Arteta and Arsenal, I've said a lot, like, I get it, Arsenal need to win a trophy, and they need to win one of the big trophies, and need to get over the line, and I'm not doubting that. And next year, I think, if he wins nothing, I think he goes, and if they win nothing, your guys like your Salibas and things like that, whoever else, I think Saka will always stay there, but they will start to get, the likes of Madrid and all those guys will start to be interested in them, and they'll start to look and go, well, yeah, like, we haven't won anything here. And I've been through that as a Liverpool fan with your Torres and your Suarez's and your Coutinho's, even Gerrard at the time, when we were just shit, right? And these big clubs come in for them, and, you don't begrudge them that. And I know I've just said that about Trent, but he's A, Scouse, and B, we're at the level where we're up at the top, and we feel like we're competing for titles and hopefully the Champions League again next season. But, those guys will go, and you have to say fair play. Like, we're not winning anything here. Why would they not want to go? Alonso left, Mascherano left. Like, those guys will go, and they're not local boys, and they're going to want to go and play for these teams. So, yeah, next season's huge for them, and if it doesn't start off well, I think he'll be in a little bit of trouble. I really do, because I think they'll start to lose patience with him. On the flip side of that, I do just want to say I think what he's done is really, really difficult. I think where he's got Arsenal to and the level he's got them playing to is difficult. To push City to the last day of the season last year is no easy feat. It's extremely difficult, and it's not going to be easy. And it's like England, right? It's like the national team in England getting Tuchel, and it's like if they're appointing someone, it's just to try and get them over the line, but it's easier said than done, man, and a lot goes for you and against you, injuries and sending offs and VAR decisions, and there's just so much that plays into it. So I just think be careful what you wish for, but at the same time, it's also true that he does need to win a big trophy, and if he doesn't, then, maybe it is time for him to go. They've just focused so much on the 1% for me this season, the set pieces and everything like that. You can see it was big yesterday. They do a great one where they all kind of play high, and Liverpool try and play them all off, but Saka starts deep and makes that run in, and probably should do a bit better with it. So, that's great, but they focused on the 1% for me, and the football they played last season was brilliant, and like I say, they took City to the last day, and it just didn't quite work, and it's almost like they've looked into it and gone, can we focus on the 1% to get us over the line? But by doing that, they've lost a bit, right? They've lost that kind of outfield, scoring a goal from open play, being ruthless, which again I think they need to improve on anyway. They've lost that by focusing on the 1%. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. That's all my thoughts on the weekend stuff. I will try and do as much of this as I can as into the last couple of weeks. I do head away on Friday, and I'm away for 10 days. I'm at a stag do in Bristol next weekend. I'm then at a wedding in Cornwall, kind of middle of the week, and I do head into Liverpool for the final day of the season in the trophy parade. So I'm going to get lots of content in terms of that. Certainly when I'm in Liverpool, try and fire just kind of quick thoughts videos up while I'm away in Bristol and in Cornwall when I can. So probably won't be any in-depth stuff like this until the season finishes. I want to get a kind of in-person podcast with the boys once, Champions League's done, Europa League's done, playoffs are done, FA Cup's done, and just really look back in the season and have a good kind of chat about it. So yeah, these will be the videos that will kind of just start to be purely on the subscription service when I start that at the end of the summer. If you watch all the way to the end, or you listen all the way to the end, you're probably a close friend, or you're probably following along, and I appreciate that, and thank you. Drop me a message, comment on the video. What type of stuff would you like to see on the subscription service from a football side of things? Obviously I'll do sit down podcasts, I'll get players on, I'll get coaches on, I'll have the boys on, I'll do videos like this. I don't know about doing kind of tactical analysis breakdowns. It's not really my vibe, to be honest. Not to say I won't do it, but let's see. So yeah, if you have any ideas, let me know, shoot me a message, drop a comment. Thanks as always for listening. It is Monday. It's a little cloudy here in Scotland, but I've got a top, I've got some shorts on. Just about to go have a little spliff, hit the yoga mat for about half an hour, get some yin yoga in, and start the week off and get that mind clear and get the week going. So hope everyone has a good one, get after it, and yeah, if you're a mate of mine and you're coming to Bristol or Cornwall or Liverpool, I'll see you there the week. Cheers.